Inside a gold-plated palace, Sheikh Rashid lay motionless on his silk bed. With a weak wave, he ordered his doctors and servants to leave. But this wasn't real. The billionaire was pretending to be deathly ill, testing the loyalty of everyone who worked for him. The entire mansion buzzed with whispers. Some were scared, others secretly celebrated. In the corner, 10-year-old Amina, the maid's daughter, quietly brought water and a blanket. When the sheikh trembled and asked, "Why do you help me when I have no power left?" Amina softly replied, "Because you are still human." The sheikh froze. The entire room went silent. Amina was only 10 years old. She lived in the old servants' quarters at the edge of the palace grounds. Her mother worked as a maid, scrubbing floors and washing dishes from dawn until midnight. They were poor. Their room had cracked walls and a single window that barely opened. But Amina's mother taught her one thing above all else: respect everyone, no matter how rich or poor they are. Sheikh Rashid was different. He was a billionaire who owned hotels, oil fields, and half the city. People bowed when he walked past. They never looked him in the eye. He was known for being cold, calculating. He trusted no one, not his advisors, not his staff, not even his own family. He believed that loyalty was a lie people told to get what they wanted. So one morning, Sheikh Rashid made a decision. He would test everyone. He told his private doctor to spread a rumor. The sheikh was dying, a rare illness, no cure. The doctor hesitated, but the sheikh insisted. Within hours, the entire palace knew. Whispers filled the marble hallways. Servants gathered in corners, speaking in low voices. Some were genuinely worried, but many were not. The head butler, a man named Karim, stood in the kitchen with 3 other senior staff members. He smirked. "We serve him because he pays us, not because we care about him." The others nodded. One woman laughed quietly. "If he dies, we'll just work for someone else, someone easier to deal with." Amina was walking past the kitchen door when she heard this. She stopped. Her small hands gripped the edge of her worn dress. Her heart sank. She wanted to say something, to defend the sheikh, but she was just a child, the daughter of a maid. No one would listen to her. So she lowered her head and walked away, feeling the weight of their cruelty. The news continued to spread. By evening, the palace felt different, colder. The usual energy was gone. Servants moved through the halls like shadows. Some packed their belongings in secret, preparing to leave. Others whispered about finding new jobs. The loyalty they had once pretended to have was crumbling. Fast. Amina sat with her mother that night in their small room. Her mother was quiet, folding laundry with tired hands. Amina finally spoke. "Mama, is the sheikh really dying?" Her mother paused. She looked at her daughter with soft, sad eyes. "I don't know, Habibti, but even if he is, we must still show him kindness. That is what good people do." Amina nodded. She didn't fully understand everything happening around her, but she understood kindness. That was enough. The next morning, the palace felt like a graveyard. The sheikh had not left his room. The doctor visited twice and left shaking his head. Servants walked past the sheikh's door without stopping. No one knocked. No one asked if he needed anything. It was as if he had already died. And in the kitchen, Karim raised his coffee cup and smiled. 3 more days, then we're free. But Amina noticed something the others didn't. The silence wasn't just in the hallways. It was in people's hearts. The palace had always been grand, filled with gold and marble and priceless art. But now it felt hollow, empty, like a beautiful shell with nothing inside. She watched as servants who had worked there for years walked out the gates without looking back. No goodbye, no thank you, just gone. Her mother noticed too. That evening, as they ate their simple dinner of bread and lentils, she spoke quietly. "People show their true faces when they think no one is watching." Amina looked up. "Will we leave too, Mama?" Her mother shook her head firmly. No, Habibti, we stay, not because we have to, but because it's right. Amina smiled. She didn't need to understand everything. She just needed to follow her mother's example. The test had officially begun. For 3 days, Sheikh Rashid stayed in his room, pretending to be on the edge of death. He barely moved. He spoke in weak whispers when the doctor came to check on him. The curtains were drawn. The room was dim. It looked like a man waiting to die. But outside that room, the palace was falling apart. On the first day, half the staff disappeared. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't say goodbye. They simply left. Some claimed they had family emergencies. Others said they were too emotionally overwhelmed to continue working. But the truth was obvious. They were abandoning him. By the second day, even more were gone. The hallways that were once filled with servants now echoed with emptiness. Dust began to settle on the furniture. Meals were no longer prepared on time. The gardens went untended. It was as if the palace itself was dying along with its master. Only a handful of people remained. Amina and her mother were among them. They continued their work quietly, without complaint. Amina's mother cleaned the sheikh's room every morning, even though he barely acknowledged her. Amina helped by carrying fresh water and folding clean linens. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because it felt right. Karim, the head butler, was still there too, but not out of loyalty. He stayed because he wanted to make sure he got his final paycheck. He spent most of his time in the staff lounge, mocking the few who remained. "Look at you," he said to Amina's mother one afternoon. "Still scrubbing floors for a man who doesn't even know your name. Pathetic." Amina's mother said nothing. She kept her eyes down and continued working. But Amina, standing nearby, clenched her small fists. She wanted to scream at Karim, to tell him how wrong he was, but her mother had taught her better. Dignity doesn't need to shout. On the third night, everything changed. The doctor arrived at the palace in a rush. He went straight to the sheikh's room and stayed there for nearly an hour. When he finally came out, his face was grim. He gathered the remaining staff in the main hall. His voice was heavy. "The sheikh has collapsed. His condition is critical. He may not survive the night." The room went silent. A few people gasped. Others looked at the floor. But no one moved to help. No one volunteered to sit with him. Karim crossed his arms and muttered, "Well, it was bound to happen." Another servant shrugged. "What can we do? We're not doctors." Amina stood at the back of the hall, holding her mother's hand. Her eyes filled with tears. Not because she knew the sheikh personally, but because she couldn't stand the coldness, the cruelty, the way people could just stop caring. That night, while everyone else went to bed, Amina couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the sheikh, alone in that dark room. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her mother. She tiptoed through the silent palace, her bare feet cold against the marble floors. She reached the sheikh's door and hesitated. Then, she gently pushed it open. The room was darker than she expected. The air smelled like medicine and exhaustion. The sheikh lay still on his bed, his breathing shallow. Amina's heart pounded. She walked slowly to the side of the bed and placed a glass of water on the nightstand. Then she took the blanket from the chair and carefully draped it over him. She knelt beside the bed and closed her eyes. She whispered a small prayer, the one her mother had taught her. A prayer for peace, for healing, for mercy. She didn't know if the sheikh could hear her, but it didn't matter. She wasn't doing this for recognition. She was doing it because it was right. Just as she finished, the sheikh's eyes opened. Just slightly. He looked at her through the dim light. His voice came out in a hoarse whisper. "Why are you here, child?" Amina froze. She didn't expect him to be awake. She swallowed her fear and answered softly, "Because no one should be alone when they're scared." The sheikh stared at her. His cold, calculating eyes softened for just a moment. He asked again, his voice breaking, "But I have no power now. I can't reward you. I can't protect you. Why would you stay? Amina looked down at her hands. Then she looked back at him. Her voice was small but steady. Because being kind doesn't depend on what you get back. The sheikh said nothing. He just watched her. This little girl, this nobody, and for the first time in years, he felt something crack inside his chest. Something he had buried long ago. Shame, gratitude, hope. He closed his eyes again. But this time, a single tear rolled down his cheek. Amina stood up quietly, bowed her head, and left the room. Outside the door, hidden in the shadows. Her mother had been watching the whole time. She said nothing. She just took her daughter's hand and led her back to their room. That night, Amina slept deeply. She didn't know it yet, but she had just changed everything. Hold on, let us know. From which city are you watching? It's amazing to see how far stories like this can spread. Subscribe if you want to see the twist unfold with us. And now, back to the table where everything changed. The next morning, everything changed. Sheikh Rashid opened his eyes. Not weakly, not slowly, but fully, completely. He sat up in his bed and stretched his arms. The illness had been alive from the start. Every cough, every trembling hand, every whispered word. All of it was an act, a carefully designed test. And now, the results were in. He stood up and walked to the window. He pulled back the heavy curtains and let the sunlight flood the room. Outside, the palace grounds were quiet. Too quiet. He had expected this, but seeing it with his own eyes still stung. The people he had paid, the people he had trusted, the people who had sworn loyalty to him, they were all gone. Well, almost all of them. He turned and looked at the small glass of water still sitting on his nightstand, the blanket that had been draped over him during the night. He remembered the little girl, Amina, the maid's daughter. She had stayed. She had cared. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Sheikh Rashid called for his personal assistant. The man arrived within minutes, surprised to see the sheikh looking so healthy. Gather everyone who is still here, the sheikh commanded. I want them in the main hall. Now. The assistant hesitated. But sir, there are only a few people left. The sheikh's eyes hardened. Then it won't take long. Within the hour, the remaining staff gathered in the grand hall. Amina stood beside her mother, holding her hand tightly. They looked small and nervous in the massive room. Karim was there too, leaning against a marble pillar with his arms crossed. A few other servants stood scattered around, whispering to each other. Then the doors opened. Sheikh Rashid walked in, not sick, not weak, completely healthy. The room went silent, jaws dropped, eyes widened. Karim straightened up immediately, the smug expression wiped from his face. Good morning, the sheikh said, his voice calm but cold. I see many of you are surprised. Let me explain. He walked slowly to the center of the room. Every step echoed. For the past 3 days, I was not sick. I was testing all of you. I wanted to see who would stay, who would care, who actually valued loyalty over money. He paused and looked around. And most of you failed. Karim shifted uncomfortably. A woman near the back lowered her head. Another servant tried to speak, but the sheikh raised his hand. Spare me your excuses. I know exactly who left. I know who mocked me behind my back. I know who celebrated my supposed death. His voice grew sharper. And I know who stayed. He turned and looked directly at Amina and her mother. The little girl's eyes widened. Her mother squeezed her hand. The sheikh walked toward them, and the entire room held its breath. He stopped just a few feet away. Then, to everyone's shock, he knelt down. He lowered himself to Amina's eye level. You came to my room last night, he said softly. You brought me water. You covered me with a blanket. And when I asked you why, do you remember what you said? Amina nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. I said, because being kind doesn't depend on what you get back. The sheikh smiled, a real, genuine smile. Exactly. He stood up and faced the room again. His voice rang out loud and clear. This child, the daughter of a maid, she showed me more loyalty in one night than most of you have shown in years. While you were planning your escapes, she was praying for my recovery. While you were laughing in the kitchen, she was bringing me comfort. He let the words sink in. So tell me, who is truly rich here? The silence was unbearable. Karim stared at the floor. The other servants couldn't look the sheikh in the eye. Shame filled the room like a thick fog. Amina's mother stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, tears of pride. Her daughter had done something extraordinary without even realizing it. Sheikh Rashid walked back to the center of the room. I had cameras installed, he continued. Hidden cameras. I watched everything. Every conversation, every betrayal, every moment of cruelty. He pulled out a small remote and pressed a button. A large screen descended from the ceiling. Let me show you. The footage began to play. It showed Karim in the kitchen, mocking the sheikh. It showed servants packing their bags and sneaking out in the middle of the night. It showed people laughing, gossiping, celebrating. And then it showed Amina, walking quietly through the dark hallways, entering the sheikh's room, kneeling beside his bed, praying. The room watched in complete silence. When the footage ended, no one moved, no one spoke. The contrast was devastating. The cruelty of the many versus the kindness of the few. Sheikh Rashid turned off the screen. This is what loyalty looks like, he said, pointing to Amina. This is what honor looks like. And this, he gestured to the rest of the room, is what betrayal looks like. Karim finally spoke, his voice shaking. Your Excellency, we didn't know. We thought, the sheikh cut him off. You thought I was dying, so it didn't matter anymore. You thought you could discard me like trash. You thought wrong. The room froze again. This was the revenge freeze, the moment where everyone realized there would be consequences. But the sheikh wasn't done. He turned back to Amina and her mother. From this moment forward, everything changes, he said. His voice softened. You will no longer live in the servants' quarters. You will have your own suite in the main palace. Your daughter will receive a full scholarship, education, university, everything she needs. Amina's mother gasped, Your Excellency, we don't deserve. The sheikh shook his head. You deserve more than I can ever give you. He looked back at the others. As for the rest of you, you are dismissed. Leave this palace today and never return. Karim tried to protest, but the sheikh's gaze silenced him. You made your choice. Now live with it. One by one, the disloyal servants shuffled out of the hall, their heads down, their futures uncertain. When they were gone, only Amina, her mother, and the sheikh remained. The massive hall felt smaller now, more intimate. Amina finally spoke, her small voice echoing. You were never really sick, were you? The sheikh smiled sadly. No, child, but I was lost, and you helped me find my way back. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, the entire city knew what had happened. The story of the sheikh's test, the betrayal of the staff, and most importantly, the kindness of a 10-year-old girl. People talked about it in the markets, in the cafes, on the streets. Everyone had an opinion. At first, some people defended the servants who left. They were just protecting themselves, one merchant said. Why should they stay for a dying man? But as more details emerged, especially the footage of Karim mocking the sheikh and the others celebrating, public opinion shifted. Fast. They weren't protecting themselves, a woman argued in the marketplace. They were vultures waiting for him to die. Others agreed. The tide was turning. What had started as sympathy for the servants became outrage. They had been exposed, not just to the sheikh, but to the entire world. Social media exploded. The hidden camera footage leaked online. Millions watched. Comments poured in. This is why loyalty matters. That little girl has more honor than all of them combined. Kareem should be ashamed. The story went viral. News outlets picked it up. Journalists tried to interview the fired servants, but most refused to speak. They knew they had been caught, and there was no defense. Back at the palace, life was transforming for Amina and her mother. True to his word, Sheikh Rashid had given them a beautiful suite on the second floor. Large windows overlooking the gardens, soft beds with silk sheets, a private bathroom with hot water. Amina couldn't believe it. She kept asking her mother if it was real. "Yes, Habibti," her mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "It's real." The sheikh also made another announcement. He held a press conference in the palace courtyard. Cameras from every major network were there. He stood at a podium, dignified and strong. "I want to make something very clear," he began. "Amina and her mother are not just employees. They are family now. Amina will attend the finest schools. She will have every opportunity I can provide, because she showed me something I had forgotten. That true wealth is not in money, it's in character." The crowd erupted in applause. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Photographers snapped pictures of Amina standing beside the sheikh, shy but smiling. Her mother stood just behind them, overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. This was the community flip. The moment when everyone who had once ignored this little girl now celebrated her. When the powerless became powerful, when the overlooked became honored. Within days, Amina received gifts from strangers, letters of encouragement, scholarships from universities across the country, invitations to speak at schools. People wanted to meet her, to thank her, to tell her she had inspired them. But Amina didn't let it go to her head. Her mother made sure of that. "Stay humble, Habibti," she reminded her every night. "Kindness doesn't need applause." Meanwhile, the servants who had left were struggling. Kareem couldn't find work anywhere. His reputation was destroyed. Other employers didn't trust him. If he betrayed a sheikh, he'll betray anyone, they said. The same was true for the others. They had gained nothing from their betrayal and lost everything. The palace itself felt different now. The sheikh hired new staff, but this time he chose carefully. He looked for character, not just skill. He wanted people who would stay not just when times were good, but when times were hard. And he kept the blanket that Amina had placed over him. He framed it and hung it in his office. A reminder, a symbol, of the night a little girl taught a billionaire what truly mattered. Months passed. The palace settled into a new rhythm. Amina started attending a prestigious academy in the city. She wore a crisp uniform and carried a leather backpack. Every morning, a driver took her to school. Every afternoon, she came home and did her homework at a desk by the window. It still felt like a dream, but she never forgot where she came from. On weekends, she visited the old servants' quarters. She brought food and books to the family still living there. She sat with the children and told them stories. She wanted them to know that kindness could change everything, that they mattered, that their circumstances didn't define them. One evening, Amina and her mother sat together on their balcony. The sun was setting over the palace gardens, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her mother was sewing, and Amina was reading a book. After a while, her mother looked up. "Habibti, can I ask you something?" Amina nodded. "That night, when you went to the sheikh's room, weren't you scared? Didn't you think he might punish you?" Amina closed her book and thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "I was a little scared," she admitted. "But Mama, you taught me something important. You said that if you do the right thing, there's nothing to be afraid of. So I wasn't afraid of him. I was more afraid of doing nothing." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached over and hugged her daughter tightly. "You are braver than I ever was," she whispered. Amina shook her head. No, Mama, I just learned from you. They sat there together, holding each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Inside the palace, Sheikh Rashid stood in his office. He was alone, staring at the framed blanket on the wall. He thought about the test, about the betrayal, about the little girl who had seen him not as a billionaire, but as a human being. He had learned something too. That power without compassion is empty. That wealth without loyalty is meaningless. That sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest wisdom. He made a decision that night. He would change how he ran his business, how he treated people. He would lead with respect, not just authority, and he would never forget the lesson Amina had taught him. That kindness, even when no one is watching, is the truest measure of character. The story of Sheikh Rashid and Amina spread far beyond the city. It became a parable, a reminder. Parents told it to their children. Teachers shared it in classrooms. People referenced it when talking about loyalty and honor. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth. That true respect is earned, not given. That kindness doesn't need a reward. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply care when no one else will. Subscribe QH Incredible Stories if you believe true respect is earned, not given.